Hey all, this is Tina. Welcome to yet another session of our People Point series. Today we are going to be talking about employee experience. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome to our podcast Poornima Batish, who's an accomplished human resource professional with over 26 years of experience. Poornima is a seasonal professional with a diverse career in IT, FMCG, and telecom. She's worked with the likes of IBM, Microland, and others. She has been a passionate advocate of DEI initiative, just like me. Currently, Poornima is a co-founder of FayrEdge, which is a revolutionary platform empowering businesses to create positive stakeholder experience, in which she's joined hands with HR professionals like Anurag Mohit and Sukanya Chaudhary to support fairness and in this employee experience revolutionary business which impacts organization culture. Welcome, Poornima.
Thank you so much, Tina, for that warm welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm sure it is going to be an inspiring session for all our audience who is going to be listening to this podcast. So without further ado, Poornima, we'll start. So, employee experience is the buzzword. You talk about any organizations, they talk about employee experience. So let's just demystify this employee experience. What is employee experience exactly as per you?
Right. And Tina, first of all, thanks for saying employee experience, because most of the people who use it as a buzzword also say EX. So EX is, I think, something that we as HR professionals and leaders have been hearing for a few years now.
Right.
So, I wouldn't say demystify in the real sense of the term, but also to just give it a little context and framework, right? Any experience that we have is a sum total of the feelings that we are left with when we transact with anyone. And when you transpose that into an organizational context, as an employee, the way I receive my experiences with the leaders, with my peers, with my juniors, across the table, online, and what I get out of that entire relationship is all a sum total of what we call as employee experiences. And typically, the line I normally like to use is, it is not about doing right. It is about doing right by me. And that is what employee experiences is. You can be, absolutely right to the T in rolling out policies, in doing, following the rules, processes, programs. But if I don't get the feeling that you've done right by me, that is where the experience counter starts to tick. And that is what, employee experiences are usually about.
Okay. So that's really a great thing. So where does FairEdge actually come in when we are talking about employee experience?
Sure. So before I talk about FairEdge, Tina, it's important to understand how does the gamut of employee experiences play out in our employee journey, right? All of us are or have been employees or will be employees depending on what stage and age of our career we are in, right? It
Correct.
starts from the time you join the organization. I'm leaving the pre-joining part of it because, there's another context I'd like to bring later in our conversation. But as soon as I join an organization, that from that time to either staying on or exiting or, going through the life cycle of the journey, career development, learning, progressions, working with people, all that becomes a part of experiences. Now, when we at FayrEdge, and as you know, you rightly introduced FayrEdge, our focus has been on elevating experiences with organizations. We, of course, focus on many stakeholders, but for now, speaking about employees. So, Tina, as HR professionals, between the three of us founders, we've got about 85 plus years of experience, different roles, CHRO, talent leader, DI, like you mentioned, global leaders. not just India, across geo exposures, right? One of the things that we attempted to do first when we started this was, what is really employee experience all about? Can we make it tangible from an abstract, right? So in that
Right.
tangibility, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners connect to some of the words I'm going to use. We finally realized there are 6 dimensions. The
Mhm.
first one of it, not surprisingly, is inclusion. Are
Correct.
you creating things for me? And am I included even in your thought process when you're designing things for me? Whatever stage my career is, I'm a junior employee, I'm a mid stage, I'm a senior employee, I'm seasoned, I'm a fresher, I'm vintage, I'm young, different genders, different backgrounds, etc. Right? So that's number one. We focus then on something called uh, transparency. And I think this word has been used very, very often.
Correct.
Am I getting, am I seeing what I'm getting and I'm getting what I'm seeing, right? I think that is a core, and a lot of us have felt extremely delighted when somebody is transparent with us in our organization, whether it's our leaders or managers, or the other side, if someone has a lead, right?
Right.
Coupled with these two very closely is dignity and consistency. Dignity is not just respect for me, but um, do you really value me as a person, or am I just an employee code? Am I a serial number? 10 out of, I'm 5% of top talent. So am I just one of the 5% there, right?
Right.
What am I to you as an organization, right? And there's this very famous debate about human resource not being a resource, being humans. I think that we're all up privy to that debate, right? And the other word that I mentioned is consistency. Do I walk the talk? And I think COVID has been a great example. We've heard companies saying big things. We've also seen them doing big things. Many of us have decided to stay on with organizations, even with great events, I would say game-changing events like COVID, because we saw walk the talk happen. So what you promised to me, is it what you have doled out to me? So that is, Tina, I would say, the design part of intentionality of experiences. And of course, are you delivering it? Finally, the two outcome stages that we are talking about. You
Mhm.
can do all of this, but am I winning when you're
Mhm.
winning? I'm working for you, I'm doing things for you, but am I getting equitable outcomes?
Right.
That is critical. And the last is value as promise. We have all heard of EVP, employer value proposition. You promised me when I came in. Are you delivering to that value today? Have I got equal or more or less? That determines. So what, Tina, we did at FayrEdge was we ring fenced the use of the word experiences, because while it seems like a very relative abstract word, how was your experience? And if I asked you that, but it's important to see it in context, because we as HR professionals cannot, convert abstract into any use or work on it till it is tangible. And so that was how we brought, a tangibility to the concept of experiences, and that's where FairEdge initiated its journey.
That's a very good point which you mentioned about, and even in our organizations, when we talk about employee experience, tangibility actually plays an important role. While you were talking, you touched upon a very important point, which was, on fairness and transparency, and I've seen that in most of the employee satisfaction surveys, we see fairness, and it is one of the points which has a lot of weightage. So is
Yes.
that really a business differentiator, and why is it so crucial in today's workplace?
Tina, great question. And I think I can't think of the number of times the word fairness has been used in our dictionary or in our journey in our careers, right? It's almost like an everyday morning to evening affair. We speak about the word fairness and transparency coupled with it, right? So again, I just, because as HR professionals, it helps us understand in terms of, an equation or a concept. If you were to take experience as a continuum, a line, and if I were to mark 0 and positive and negative on it, fairness is the start point of the positive. Anything below fairness is
Mhm.
non-positive or negative experiences. So fairness is at the fulcrum of any positive experience. You cannot have great experiences just by continuing to do some great employee engagement initiatives, having some good team parties, having some good, calls, roundtables. Because at the end of the day, the 6 dimensions that I mentioned, if I
Mhm.
don't get equitable outcomes, and very often we use fairness in pay, fairness in promotions, fairness in progressions. We use it, we hear it and we use it. The point
Right.
is, fairness is the starting point of any experience. And as a human resource fraternity, and even as business leaders, we're also business leaders,
Right.
are we consciously embedding the tenets of fairness in all the programs and policies we design
Okay.
is a business differentiator. Because over time, if I continue to get the feeling of being shortchanged,
Mhm.
right? And I think in the recent few months, Tina, we've seen enough organizations. I mean, now they're in the public domain, so we can name a few. Like for example, one of the leading edtech organizations, which just has crumbled under its own weight, right? I mean, with all the stuff that has happened, and we're seeing how employees are coming out and talking about it, right? And we have seen viral videos of organizations where people have not felt fairness. Uh, Fairness also is, when we say it's intentional, it means, Tina, the business leaders are thinking about fairness as a conscious part of design.
Mhm.
Because if I'm not conscious of it, I can't be fair just to employees or just to customers. It's in the DNA. So
Correct.
if you are not fair in the DNA, and if I as a customer, I as an employee, I as a candidate or a vendor feel shortchanged, clearly I don't want to work in a long-term relationship with you, whatever capacity that I'm in. And that is
Correct.
where it becomes a core. So if you see uh, all the people who have stuck with the organization, I'm taking out the people who just are doing this because they need to. Emotional bonding, whether it's a customer or an employee, happens because I know you've done right by me. The failing of fairness comes in, and it improves retention, it improves stickiness and trust,
Yeah.
which, as you would agree, is the core tenet of any strong business. Because we are not here for the long term if you're not trusted, and we don't have the confidence of our stakeholders, including employees and customers.
That's correct. I agree with you completely that fairness actually gets employees to stick around and loyalty from the employees. But if you really have to translate fairness into tangible actions, other than your retention, what would that be?
Yeah, so what we normally say, Tina, is to bring in some tangibility to this. I mean, first is you have to measure your current state around those 6 tenets.
Mhm.
What is, so for example, instead of using the word fairness or experiences, just as is, we have to delayer them or unpack them and say, let me understand what the current state is. So, for example,
Mhm.
through your satisfaction surveys, different tools that organizations have. So when we work with organizations, we say, first figure out your as is. How are you on inclusion? How are you on transparency? Because sometimes you might be great on dignity, but
Right.
you could have a problem in
Mhm.
consistency. I might be very respectful, I might be very, very empathetic as an organization. But then again, what about consistency? What about transparency? So, one
Right.
is, it's important to make, like you said, use the word tangible. For us, tangibility comes in when you go a little deeper into the insights and figure.
Mhm.
Is it's important. We design a lot of things. We design processes, we design systems, we design frameworks. But is the design intentionally fair to the receiver, which is in this case the employee. So when
Right.
you do the insighting, you'll get a sense,
Right.
even is it even design, that I'm talking about. So for example, if there is a policy on flexibility, let's take, I mean, that's a very commonly used word nowadays, right? Flexibility, hybrid working, right? Um, Somehow these words have got associated with women till COVID happened, right?
Right.
It was assumed that women needed flexibility, right? And
Right.
in my career, Tina, I've asked at least 10 to 15,000 people, men and women. Till
Mhm.
date, I've not heard a man saying, I don't want flexibility, or any
Agree.
other gender saying they don't want flexibility, right? So,
Right.
what is important is, am I intentionally creating systems and programs and policies to include the larger set of people? Or am I just, creating one myopic policy and delivering it and seeing, okay, let's see what happens to this policy, no? So that, Tina, is the tangibility that will come in if you measure on which of the tenets things are not going well. And then, of course, unpack it and backpack it and say, okay, this is where, maybe this needs to be loaded or something else needs to be added to this. So that's where we convert it into reality or action oriented stuff, insights, as we call it.
Yeah. Which you actually rightly pointed out that, like say policy is what we actually implement, are coming up with, how much it's being implemented. In fact, we were just trying to do an analysis. Small things like paternity leave, so that is a policy which is there. And it is there for all employees. But how many employees are actually taking that paternity leave?
Yes.
Though you give them 1 month or whatever it is, but does their work profile allow them to take that kind of leave? So, like you mentioned, that be it male or female, they would require, that kind of flexibility when we are talking about workplace. But however, you spoke about the 6 dimensions. We spoke about the employee experience. We touched upon, a little bit on the employee satisfaction survey also. So if I have to talk about employee experience, if I have to talk about employee satisfaction surveys and company culture, how would you unfold all of this together in one bouquet or one packet?
Sure. And Tina, I'm going to give you my views. I'm going to pick up that example that you just threw up in terms of paternity leave, and that's a very interesting policy because in my work in DI, I think I've spent a lot of time discussing, debating this with men, women organizations, right? And what you said is very interesting. There is a policy that exists for all, so there is an intent, right? I mean, the company has consciously decided, I mean, whoever is, a parent, and in this case, I don't know whether you've restricted it to men or, it's gender neutral or whatever that is, right? So when there
Mhm.
is a paternity leave, right? And you said people are not taking it in many instances, and this is not an isolated case. This is a recurrence with many organizations, and this is where the difference between um, talking and walking comes, right? And that's where culture takes precedence, right? If
Okay.
I have a policy and I'm not seeing its implementation, there are only two, three things. One is either it's not relevant to me, yeah. In this case, it's highly unlikely because fathers and parents need to spend time with their newborns, right? That's clearly, so there is the need is established. But now comes behaviors, which is the deliver part of experience and finally leading to culture. If the
Mhm.
culture around the organization
Mhm.
looks down upon those who take leaves to take care of children or newborns at home,
Mhm.
and here is where leaders and peers have to lead by example.
Mhm.
I've had many supervisors or bosses, males, who have said in public calls, look, I want to go home, right? And this is the days when Big Basket and Amazon Fresh was not available, right? I want
Mhm.
to go home because I want to buy vegetables.
Mhm.
I'm going home to a sick child. Okay.
Mhm.
I want to be home because I want to take care of my newborn. I'm an equal parent.
Mhm.
If the behavior at the workplace, peer and superior behavior, which is supervisor or managerial behavior, does not mirror the intent of the policy,
Mhm.
naturally people will hesitate because they don't want to risk their careers in being perceived as someone who's a soft person, not a
Mhm.
workaholic,
Correct.
gives family equal or more importance, and is an equal parent. So,
Mhm.
this is, Tina, the difference and the connect between experiences, engagement, and culture. So, first, let me take experience to culture, which is what I was just talking about.
Right.
Unless you have an experience centric process embedded in the behaviors of leaders and managers, you
Mhm.
are not going to see it getting translated into action or
Mhm.
delivery, because they'll say, oh, there's a great policy. If you reward and recognize people who take less leaves, and I don't mean,
Mhm.
very explicit recognition, but
Mhm.
implicit. She
Mhm.
was there for most part of the year, whereas you were not there for three-fourths of the year.
Correct.
He was there, all the time working, 9 to 9 in the office, and you used to leave office at 6 o'clock. If
Mhm.
these are, implicit ways of rewarding workaholics, obviously you're not going to have takers for any such policies, because such policies are construed as, non um, uh, company oriented or loyal, right? So that is on the cultural bit. Coming
Mhm.
to the engagement bit,
Mhm.
what is important is, uh, today engagement is a very loosely used word, Tina. When we use the word employee engagement, it is a lot of celebration of some days, team parties,
Friends.
all hands events. It's events
Yeah.
based.
Yeah. Correct.
What is the difference between real engagement and this sort of engagement is, unless I've had positive, fair to positive experiences, and like I said, fair is the starting point of positive. You can do better than fair. Unless my experiences have been fair or positive over a period of time, you are not going to have engaged employees. You're going to have employees who are, just happy because they've had, some drinks, or, played a game, or, just had some good outbound. But when they come back, they're not emotionally connected. They've had fun, but they're not emotionally connected. So the difference between what experience does to employee engagement is, it makes it emotional, it makes it real, genuine, rather than just lip service and, just something that HR has to do on the list of things. So that is the connect between experience, engagement, and culture.
Mhm.
Experiences at the core, positive experiences enable positive engagement, and a culture that allows people to stay and thrive in the organization, Tina. If I were to use some of the HR jargons we use, I'd like to put it that way.
Right. Right. So we did discuss about, you spoke about that, rightly mentioned that, events are not really, we are talking about engagement, and there is more to engagement than what we really talk about. So what can organizations do, like say on the employee experience front to build a positive culture or to build a positive culture?
Um, yeah. So, Tina, it first of all, it comes down to the core tenets that I, explained a little earlier. You
Mhm.
have to look at the employee journey in the organization. So if
Right.
it starts with onboarding, if it is learning, if it is career development, um, handling of challenges, that is, I would say, intentional embedding of fairness
Mhm.
and experiences into the whole gamut of stuff, right? How do I see, for example, if someone is remotely joining,
Mhm.
is the setup comfortable? How is their experience of joining? How is their experience of interacting with people, right? I give a simple example. when we you know, tell people to come at a certain time on the office for onboarding, right? I mean, this is assuming everything is physically, happening. We bombard them with a lot of forms. Some of it is statutory. You can't do anything about it. You have to give it to them and get it done. On the same day, they just get exposed to so many policies, so many things. I've very often heard this from new joinees in the first 6 months. When you ask them, when they've not done something right, we said, why, it was told to you during your onboarding, why haven't you just looked at it? They said, ma'am, 100 things were told to us on our onboarding day, right? I don't remember all of it, right? Naturally, right? And I don't know where to go and look for it. So what has happened is we have done our job. We have bombarded and downloaded a lot of stuff to them. But once they come back, do they know where to look? And do they know whom to ask if they have a question, over a period of time? Some organizations, if and maybe Tina, you worked in, maybe currently also you're doing this, incorporated the buddy system. The buddy system was an elevation of experience, right? Don't just listen to my bombardment on day one. Here's someone who's there with you who can help you, change the game.
Right.
Some of the other things that people have done is, uploaded a lot of policies, a lot of systems on the tools. Now we've spoken a lot about AI, right? I mean, people talk about it, everybody talks about it, right? Here is a beautiful way you can use Gen AI to ensure that an employee can quickly distill the questions he or she or they want on the policies and get access to it. Why not, right? That is the thought process, Tina, we're looking at for people. So process, systems, and technology, followed by behaviors. These are the 4 places you have to make changes to have better experiences. If you obviously don't have a process or a system, it's not going to run. People behaviors, just like we spoke about in that, paternity policy there, right? And technology. By the way, Tina, employee experience or EX is used very heavily in technology terms because we believe our human capital, management software, HCM, whatever we use, different softwares are available, will improve EX or employee experience. But only technology is not going to do it. I mean, we know that, right? Technology also creates its own problems unless you have the intent. So to make actionable happenings on experiences, you have to tackle all of these sides to improve that. That is number one. Number two, Tina, it's also important. One of the things we constantly talk about is do a check on what management thinks they're doing right, and then match it with what employees are telling you. We call it the voice of employee or voice of stakeholder. Because many a times, we as HR leaders, professionals do a lot of things. And we feel, we're doing everything to improve the experiences. But is it really making a difference to the experiences? Has to be checked. So, and we've done this interestingly in a few organizations. And not surprisingly, we found leaders have overestimated their delivery of experiences versus what people have actually experienced. So I might say I've done 4 initiatives because I'm KRA driven, and we call it, Tina, the service mindset, right? Is there a service mindset? So if I have a problem, and if you have a way for me to come to you, grievance, portal, open forums, speak up, whatever you call it inside the organization, I can ask you a problem, but then you are trying to solve for a problem persona. What about, if I just want to share my experiences with you today on any company's intranet, if I'm an employee, I just want to share, forget about pulse survey, forget about SAT surveys. That is, you're pushing it out to me. But today I want to come and give you feedback. Just, I've had a great experience with my team, my manager, my, whatever in the company, right? Can I just simply come and put it somewhere on your system where, somebody is picking it up in the back end and saying, oh, wow, 10 people have said this policy is amazing. I don't want to wait for pulse surveys. I don't want to wait for SAT surveys because by then I would have forgotten the experiences. That, Tina, is an action of collecting real-time, close to real-time insights and
Correct.
allowing the employee to share their instances with you when they want to rather than when you want them to share. We are all familiar with, goading and herding employees to fill SAT surveys. I think a lot of our KRAs have been dependent on that, right? I want 90% closure of employee SAT, push everybody to close the, 70, 60, 50 questionnaire satisfaction survey, right? But you can get surveys are important. Surveys are pulse is important point in time because then you get the delta. But can you couple real time ongoing feedback with that? And this is a challenge that we've been finding. We've done even we've been in companies. I still cannot recall in many of the companies that I worked with where I could just go and give feedback without having to speak to anyone, without calling up someone. I maybe don't want to identify myself also. I just want to say, hey, Tina, thank you for this policy. Great job done. That's all that I want to say. I think, this policy or this program, this, policy that you just released, I think it's terrible. Can I just come and say some of these things without you having to ask me? That, Tina, is the bridge between intentionality of improving experiences versus just doing it as another program or another buzzword in the industry, so to speak.
Right.
I don't know if
Interesting.
that answered your question, but yeah, that is how we
Answered, and in fact, it unfolded quite a few things for me also. And the interesting fact what you covered was on the real-time feedback, and it actually got me thinking that do we really have this real-time system or tools in place where our employees can, come and put in their feedback as per their convenience. They're not forced to do that. One more interesting fact that you covered on was, on the leadership part or the top management part, like say they took up some of the experiences. So how important it is to have that kind of support from the leadership or top management. One, to help socialize the employee experience in the culture itself, and also for the employees to open up and come and give this feedback on real-time basis.
Absolutely. And Tina, I think that's a very, very beautiful point that you asked because unfortunately, we all look up to our, seniors and management to be able to, be authentic leaders or walk the talk, right? And you're absolutely right. None of this can work if, as a collective, leadership is not behind this entire process, right? So that is number one. Number two, I think what we, when in our conversations with leaders, that we have, there are two things, right? Why bother about experiences, right? That's the first question. Why even bother? I'm doing a lot of things. If, I'm doing in HR, I'm doing in business, why bother about experiences? There's an amazing amount of research that is continuously coming up with stats and figures. And I'm just going to throw a few here that it says every 1% improvement in experience improves retention by 5%, which has anywhere between 30 to 80% improvement in profits. Right? So that's a clear statistic in terms of the impact of experiences. Every increase in retention also causes lower new acquisition cost, right? Because, and I think it's very well known, for every employee who leaves you have to pay 3 times the cost to hire a new or a new replacement, right? I mean, it's a very well-known fact, right? So keeping what you have is more cost-effective, improves bottom line. Clearly, there's a top line. The third thing, Tina, I was just interestingly reading the other day, is shareholder value, right? You're responsible, answerable to your investors.
Right.
It says organizations which focus on experience-led retention improve their ROI to investors by as much as 12%, right?
Right.
So it's very clear there is a case for leaders, and that is where we have to ensure they are party to the intentionality of bringing in experiences. Also, it is not possible that as a culture or a value or a DNA of the company, I am fair to one stakeholder, which is the employee or the customer, but not fair to the other. There's something wrong with the DNA, right? You can't be selectively fair. You're either fair or you're unfair. So I think those are things, Tina, that have to be sort of, brought out in leadership discussions. And clearly, walking the talk. Experience also needs a little bit of progressive long-term thinking. It's not a fast food, right? I mean, I can't change things tomorrow. It's a journey. I can't do so much in 1 year. It's a continuous journey, just like anything else. So those are, I think, some must-haves before you embark on any of this. And in real-time insights, Tina, since you spoke about it, I think one of the big things that happen in real-time insights, what we do is we give executive summaries to the leadership, whichever part of the leadership you are in, CHRO, whoever you are. For them, that is what we call as an early warning system. It's not early warning system from a person point of view. It's early warning system from a culture, from an organization point of view, from a human capital management point of view. These are things that are going super well for you. But these are things, watch out, you might want to redo and relook on an ongoing basis, because that's what helps them take actions and connect with the real-time insights. And when you go back in your all hands, tell people, look, in the last 3 months, we got these 5 insights from you, and we did these 2 actions. That, Tina, encourages people to come forward and talk more, because that if I keep giving feedback, it goes into a black hole. I'm not going to be interested as an employee to continue to do it.
Correct.
So those are some thoughts on what you just spoke about.
I think which you clearly called out, that walking the talk is something which is very important, and we've covered employee experience quite in detail. And briefly, we touched upon even the candidate experience, where you gave us an example that before onboarding. So how matured, like say when you're talking to the organizations, they are to understand candidate experience, and does it really help companies to, to attract and retain top talent?
Tina, I think thank you for bringing that up, because candidate experience has been, I would say, the lesser spoken cousin of employee experience.
Correct.
And I think in the plethora of conversations we've had, and even in our respective tenures, we keep talking about the talent market, scarcity of good talent. I think there are some problems that we've heard, recruiters or the hiring teams, TA teams talk about. Referrals are low. People, don't come back. Nobody responds. People just ghost us. There are a lot of things, people talk about. On the candidate side, we are all familiar with some of these points that I'm going to just bring up. They told me they're going to come back to me. It never happened. I chased them, but it never happened, right? I don't know. I went to the last interview, but I don't know what happened to, my candidature. I've not heard from them. I've just got a cryptic message saying my candidature is on hold, right?
Yeah.
So, Tina, the answer to all these questions is, and interestingly, what we have discovered is the amount of importance given to employee experience has not been given to candidate experience, whereas a lot of our business runs on having candidates convert into employees for the future, right? That's number one. We talk to a lot of recruiters, TA, business leaders, and for some reason, this has not been captured or doesn't get captured, except by very, very few organizations, right? I mean, once you've undergone a certain candidate process, the shortlisting process, the application process, and I think the internet is filled with comments on how candidates feel treated shoddily, not nicely. Even the nice ones don't have a place to give feedback, right? And that is where, again, we are emphasizing on this. And we interestingly did. So now I'm coming to, those who actually look at some bit of experience. Interestingly, we got, in one organization, The CHRO,
Mhm.
we did both employee experience and candidate experience check. The
Mhm.
employee experience was the highest,
Mhm.
and the candidate experience was the lowest in the stacking order. So the
Oh.
CEO made a comment and she said, this is very interesting. My HR team knows which side of the bread butter is.
Mm.
Because internal employees, can complain a lot. Candidates are not going to complain, right? I mean, they're just out in that ecosystem. So
Correct.
clearly,
Mhm.
the same teams were servicing both employees and talent,
Mhm.
and they clearly chose to service employees better, but they
Mhm.
didn't choose to service candidates because they're not. I mean, you don't know how many of them will ever join your organization. So that,
Correct.
Tina, is the biggest gap. And for them, for this particular company, they were looking at expansion, they were looking at product growth, hyper growth. You're not going to be able to find talent. They were not getting referrals.
Mm.
Nobody was willing to refer them because the candidate experiences were so poor. Candidates who they offered were not wanting to join because they saw that entire experience. So, that was a big mess. So this is what, Tina, candidate experience landscape is. Unfortunately, even though it's so important, I think it's not received the attention it does. And I think in our conversations now, we're bringing attention to this because they're also your brand ambassadors, right? I mean, every candidate speaks to five more, and they can speak positive or negative about an organization. So that's publicity for us. Free publicity can be positive or negative for us. And today, virality is a big thing. So we have to be also careful on how we manage this entire piece.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting to know that, like you rightly mentioned, that they are the brand ambassadors. So, Poonam, it's been great that we spoke about candidate experience. We've been talking about employee experience. We spoke about culture. We spoke about fairness. Any aspect of employee experience or candidate experience on this entire journey of, the topic what we've been talking about? Anything you feel that we've not covered and you would want to touch upon?
Um, no, not covered, Tina, but I think I just want to say one thing.
Uh-huh.
I think while we are in an age of technology and a lot of digital stuff is happening, experience has too often been confused with technological changes or initiatives. But there's no technology that will give experience by itself. Technology is just a channel.
Mhm.
You have to be clear on what sort of experiences you want to give to your people. What is the
Mhm.
purpose?
Mhm.
And then blend in the right technology at respective places to give it. I see a lot of organizations overemphasizing on social media channels, websites. It's important, because today employees connect through or candidates connect through that medium. But it's also important to first establish where you want to go and have a balance between behaviors, processes, and systems and technology, because overly moving to one of the four might not optimize your experience level. So that, Tina, is I think one input or point I'd like to just leave for our listeners and viewers as an HR fraternity.
Right. No, that is an interesting fact what you really mentioned, that technology alone cannot really help. There has to be an human touch and human aspect to the entire employee experience. It's been wonderful chatting with you, Poornima. It has, in fact, I take a lot of inputs from this podcast. A good learning for me on the employee experience run, and I'm sure that for our viewers also, there is a lot what they could take from this podcast. It's been inspiring, and all the best. And on behalf of NHRD, thank you, Poornima, for your time, and all the best with your passion and spreading employee experience across the organizations and getting that revolution. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Tina. Really appreciate this opportunity and this conversation. I think it and I can see the passion and the vibes resonating when you were speaking as well. So really grateful to you, and thanks to the NHRD Pune chapter, Aman, Anand, and Saee, and you. I think for some of the amazing stuff that you keep doing, in this space. So I think we're just, I mean, no wonder NHRD Pune is, one of the most happening and, forefront chapters. So kudos again. And thank you so much. A pleasure, as always, to be partnering and connecting with you. in anything that's HR and moving the fraternity forward. So thank you so much one more time.
Thank you. Have a good day.